Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our panel discussion this morning, Building a Data-Driven Workforce. Many companies are struggling to attract young adults and consider electronics manufacturing as a vocation. This panel is going to discuss some of the strategies that are being employed to try and attract people to the industry. And to my right, extreme right, we have Sanjay Huprikar from IPC. Welcome, Sanjay.
Good morning.
And to my right, we have Keith Bryant from SMTA Europe.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so let's get straight in there. And what do you think are the main barriers for young adults or young engineers wanting to pursue a career in the EMS industry?
Well, good morning, and thank you again. You pointed it out earlier. I think the industry has an image problem. We've surveyed, as part of IPC, and I'm sure Keith has done the same with SMTA, we've surveyed member companies, and we found that 75% of our companies have jobs and they can't find qualified workers for. Okay?
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy situation, but yeah, it's true throughout Europe, it's true through South America, it's true just about everywhere.
It's a global problem.
It's a global problem. We also have some additional data points now from the student side. We surveyed two-year colleges in the United States, and we wanted to see how many of those students who are in two-year colleges, or tend to be more vocational type of schools. Only 7% of those students envisioned a career in manufacturing. So on the one hand, you have all of these companies in the industry saying, we have jobs, but we can't find workers, and yet we have students saying, I'm not so sure I want to go into that line of work. To me, that screams, we as an industry need to solve our image problem. We need to remind everybody that this is a stable industry, a growth industry. There are good jobs. There's a lot of innovation going on, and you can actually have fun in this industry.
Well, there's a huge amount of opportunity, but I mean, is there a perception that everything's getting automated, so there's not going to be the jobs there in the future anyway?
I don't really think that's the issue, Trevor, at that kind of level. I mean, yes, we are going to see more automation, we are going to see artificial intelligence, we're going to see a lot of other things. But, you know, there's still a need somewhere in that chain for people. There's a need for people with a higher skill level than probably some of them have today. And that requires training, it requires a whole load of things. But, you know, as we all agree, we have an image problem. You know, we're not sexy anymore. You know, I'm an old guy in this industry now, and when I joined, you know, when you told someone you were an engineer, you know, it had some kind of status.
Yep.
But engineer now is, you know, a refuge engineer collects my rubbish at the weekends, and a domestic engineer comes and fixes my washing machine, and everybody's now an engineer. And when you say to somebody, do you want to get into engineering, the engineering that they know is this kind of stuff. And, you know, we need to be doing as an industry, a lot more work to show people that, yeah, you know, this is fun. This is a good, stable career. You know, if you want, you can travel the world doing this stuff. And, you know, it's given a lot of us a very good living for a lot of years.
Absolutely, I agree. But, you know, on the topic of having to rebadge the image, if you like, I mean, surely production managers in the future are going to have to become almost a bit more like data scientists, because they're going to have to make sense of this huge amount of data that's coming off the factory and be able to turn that into actionable data very quickly.
I think if you have quantitative skills, you have a bright future. Right. And I want that bright future to be in our industry. Right. Because we do have a lot of data. And as Keith pointed out, we have 5G, we have Industry 4.0, we have all of these great new things coming down the pike. And all of it is going to be surrounded with data. I want to make one additional point that you made earlier. Yes, the world is automating. But at the end of the day, all of the products that we're talking about still have circuit boards, still have circuit board assemblies, still have wire harness and cabling attached to it. Most of those jobs are still manual. We still need qualified people to put those boards together and put those sub-assemblies together.
Right, definitely.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, and in some ways, this is the part of the problem. You know, you said, you know, production managers of the future. You know, nobody comes out of university and becomes a production manager.
Yes.
You know, people come out of university and they have maybe 2-3 steps before they get there. But in a lot of other industries, they can step into quite a high-level career with a high salary and everything else, almost straight out of university. And I think it's that progression that's making us a bit less attractive.
Well, it used to be the case, though, that there were courses at the vocational colleges and universities for engineering, but they seem to have gone when a lot of the manufacturing moved to Asia. They need to be replaced. There needs to be some government initiatives come in here to help drive people back into engineering.
I don't know if it's in the whole of Europe, but in early 2017, the UK government said that all manufacturing companies over a certain level of turnover have to reinvest 0.5% of their wages bill into apprenticeships and training. And when we heard this, we thought, wonderful. But the problem is most people are using it to upskill their existing workforce. So that, you can upskill people you've got already, and you're fairly sure that you get a quick return. But an apprenticeship is a 4-year program, and at the end of it, that apprentice may well decide that he's going to go and work for somebody else. So, this is a much higher commitment. But, sorry, Trevor, we do have things like the Manufacturing Technology Center, which is a public-private partnership. And, they take young potential engineers and they put them through a very wide and varied course, which is done in conjunction with employers. The employer effectively pays the salary. They get an amount of that funded from the government. But most of the training and most of the, let's say, the hard work in terms of education is done by the MTC with specialist lecturers, with state-of-the-art equipment, and it gives them a broad basis, not only into electronics, but a little bit of additive and a little bit of the sciences and all the rest of the stuff. So this is working really well. But the guys that come out of it are really smart and they do a really great job for their companies. But there's not enough places doing this anymore.
Right.
And when we lost the technical colleges because they became as a part of the university system, we lost that link between education and industry. Okay, we lost a lot of the industry in Western Europe, but the ones that were left, we lost that link between the two. And I think that's what needs rekindling. And at SMTA Europe, we're doing a lot of support work to try and rebuild these links and to try and get the profile raised, to be simplistic.
Right. It's kind of interesting what you say there, and rather unfortunate that they're spending their money upskilling existing workers rather than spending it to get apprenticeships and get people actually into the factories in the first place, because the environment of the training environment within factories is changing too. We've got a lot of augmented reality coming in, so that you're able to basically, once you've got a skilled worker, they can do multiple jobs by using augmented reality systems, and it doesn't need an awful lot of training thereafter. But it's unfortunate they're spending the money that way.
Yeah, and from a commercial point of view, you can see it. There have been a few organizations that are busy lobbying the government to get them to change it to apprenticeships, not apprenticeships and training.
Right.
Because that's what we need. As you say, once people are in the industry, I think generally they like it. It's getting them to take that first step and getting them away from the competitive companies if they're really clever data guys, or if they're going to university, it's political science, social studies. All of these things are the sexy places to be now.
Right. But no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, there's definitely is a resistance, it seems, for that generation of wanting to get their hands dirty. And I think the generation that Keith is referring to, which I'm in that generation as well, we actually enjoyed getting our hands dirty and learning about these things. I think the other problem that industry is having is there's not a one-size-fits-all solution to this, right? Keith spoke very eloquently about the engineering track, right? But I think the other track we need to look at is the line operator track, right? I think the problem we're having now in the industry is that so challenge one we talked about earlier is, okay, first we got to get people to the industry. All right. So let's say we miraculously solve that issue. Once they get here, we need to give them a progression. right? We need to clearly articulate, okay, you start as a line operator, and if you do X, Y, and Z, then maybe you're going to be an inspector 10 years down the road.
Right.
And then you're going to graduate to line supervisor down the road. And then your final place is production manager.
Right.
We need to clearly define what those steps are. I think we've lost that recipe along the way. The industry's lost that recipe. We're just trying so hard to get people here. We're not focused on, okay, what do we do with them once they get here?
Yeah. So let's look at what initiatives are out there to try and attract new engineers into this industry. IPC, I know, has been doing some big things in the US, but I also believe you've got something happening over here in Europe. Can you tell us a bit about that, Sanjay?
Sure, happy to. So 2 years ago, IPC started its IPC Education Foundation. 3 basic pillars for what we wanted to do. A, we wanted to create a connection between industry and academia, students, and hopefully that future emerging workforce. 2, we wanted to give those students some meaningful learning opportunities so that they really understand this industry that Keith and I love so much, what it really means, right? And 3, we wanted to give them a progression for potential employment down the road. So we've kicked off a lot of student chapters in the US, and from some of those learnings, we're now coming into approaching Europe. Europe is a very different animal compared to the United States, but we're up for the challenge. Today, as a matter of fact, we have students from the Technical University of Munich visiting our hand soldering booth. Most of those kids have probably never picked up a soldering iron in their life. They probably have never seen a soldering iron in their life. But it's an integral part of what we do in this industry. So we're happy to expose them to that. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to give these students more exposure points, more learning opportunities. And so we're going to be piloting some of these types of programs here in Europe beginning in 2020.
That's great. I mean, do you think that kids, even high school kids, should be encouraged to go on tours of electronics factories? Because I know in the couple of cases I know of in the US, the first comments that have come out a lot of these kids' mouths is, "Oh my God, I thought factories were dirty." You know, they don't understand that they're highly clean, highly mechanized places and good places to work in.
I know I can speak to all of the regions that I visited manufacturing. Factory managers would love to give tours to students.
Yeah.
And I think they're looking at it not just from a college student or a university student. They want to start earlier. I think we need to create this image of how important this industry is, all the way even back to the high school and even to the primary school level.
Yeah.
And so our foundation is more focused on high school than we are at the collegiate level right now.
Really? Yeah. Okay, that's useful. Yeah. So I mean, Keith, what should government be doing to really help us in all of this?
Realizing that the things that they do, like, as I say, the Manufacturing Technology Centre in Coventry in the UK, I mean, it's a state-of-the-art building, it has state-of-the-art equipment, it has really good lecturers, it does a wide range of things from supporting the industry itself and also bringing in new people and training. And, you know, you go and tour that place, and even I go, wow, the first time that I saw it.
Really?
You know, it really is that good. And, you know, in Europe, speaking from an SMTA standpoint, you know, we have university chapters in the US, and that works really well. We encourage students to come and present papers, because not only does that get them to a conference where they can do something, but it gets them to listen to all the other stuff as well and network and do all those really good things. We're still fairly new in Europe, but this is something that I have talked to the rest of the committee, and it's on the plan for something that we can do. So that's something we can do outside of government, but government needs to rebuild this link between academia and let's say the business and industrial world.
Right.
A lot of people who are in manufacturing realize that they have to use a horrible American phrase, they have to put some skin in the game if they want to have a good future, and they want engineers next year, the year after, and so on. But they're not prepared to do all of it because they say, you know, it needs to be a government initiative. You know, we have really good universities throughout Europe. We have really good lecturers. We have really good courses, but academia tends to be focused on what are you going to study afterwards. Right. So, okay, you've got this. Next, you'll go and do your master's, and It's not focused on, I'm going to do a 4-year sandwich course that involves some real work.
Right.
And at the end of it, I'm going to go out into the real world and earn a living and make my way.
Right. Well, I tend to agree with most of that. But I mean, Sanjay, at government level, what really can we do? Because you're involved both in the US and now in Brussels at the government level to try and push some initiatives forward. What can you do there to help this industry?
So we, on both sides of the Atlantic, IPC has worked with the White House in the US and in the EU here to make pledges about wanting to expose students to learning opportunities. I think we made a pledge in the US that we want, over the next 5 years, we want to provide 1 million learning opportunities for students. And I think we said we wanted to do about 500,000 here in Europe. So I think getting government support, as Keith pointed out, is important. But what we really need, in addition to that, is to get more of our industry companies engaged here. I would like to see the panel next year. I hope Keith and I are not on the panel next year, and I hope you have companies that are on the floor here talking about their initiatives for how they're bringing students into this industry.
Absolutely. Okay. So I'm going to move into the factory now, and my final question is going to be about engineers that are currently working in the factory. We're trying to progress a smart factory strategy. Do you think manufacturers have to then appoint a champion, basically, in each factory to try and chart the course for automating the factory and taking it, addressing its pain points and taking it forward to further automation? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. And as you agreed with most of what I said, I'm going to disagree with most of what you said.
Thank you.
It's a cultural thing. The companies that I work for who are looking at 4.0 and other things, it has to come from the top.
Right.
Yeah. It's a top-down flow. It's going to
but
change.
It can't just come from the top, and the top has to appoint somebody down at the production level that is going to champion all this stuff, no?
Possibly, but if it's a changing culture, then everybody needs to be involved and everybody needs to buy in. The days of saying, okay, you're going to be the Industry 4.0 guy, is difficult because in Industry 4.0 by definition it encompasses everything from goods inwards to goods outwards, and having one person who has to liaise with all of those departments is very, very difficult. What you need is the head of all of those departments to buy into what you're doing, and then you set up more of a task force than a task person. And then it works, because that's what I've seen in reality.
Right.
The first thing you need to do is you need a senior person to come in and explain the philosophy of what you're doing and why you're going to do it, and ultimately the benefits that it's going to bring commercially, because all these businesses are commercially driven.
Yeah.
And if they understand 4.0 and smart factory, they understand the benefits. Yeah. And then it needs to involve everybody from sales who can tell their customers about this great new thing, to the head of quality and the head of technical and all of these things. So yeah, it needs to be a much wider framework, I believe.
Right. Okay.
It's probably the greatest change management challenge that the industry has faced.
Yeah.
And I think Keith is pointing out, it's got to be organizational. One person will start the conversation, sure, but you have to get buy-in from everybody in order to it's a seismic change we're trying to make here as we go into 4.0 and 5G and all these, Internet of Things and Internet of Things Part 2.
Yeah.
Team effort. It can't be one person.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly an interesting journey, and it's going to certainly go on for a good few years yet. Gentlemen, I want to thank you both for joining me and discussing this very important topic. So thank you, Sanjay Huprikar from IPC.
Thank you, Trevor.
And thank you, Keith Bryant from SMTA Europe.
Thank you, Trevor.
And thank you for joining us today.